I am a ceramist, plastic artist, and sculptor. I made the sculpture The Lady of Lehm. I am the director of CPIFAC, International Professional Center in Ceramic Arts Training. The purpose is to make a plaster mold of at least 9 parts with a single plaster pour out of 25 kg of plaster. Above all, the first thing to determine when molding a sculpture is to know how to remove it from the mold when casting. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here we have 7, 8, 9 parts. The casing is to be sewed to the mold dimension, then planed, and smoothed out. So now I'll start pointing at the axis on the casing. Keys have been carved out with a flat iron. You can do it by hand, it's a little bit longer. Carved with a knife. Hollowed out with a gouge. You stick to the V shape. Dug with a teaspoon or a crankshaft. With the crankshaft, you'll try to leave it somewhat tapered. Here, it won't come out. The undercut is erased with a painted knife. Using both hands can help. The casing is to be generously soaped. Soap excess is washed off with a dry sponge and a paintbrush. Squeeze soap excess off between thumb and forefingers. Try to make it as concentrated as possible. Do not mix the products. Shake to make sure there is no excess. Press slip the inner part with the X-ray sheet. Modifying the key of the inner mold. Let it turn into a standard key. The model is set up on the casing with nails, things and back. The top of the nail will completely disappear. There you are, pointing at the joining section. To determine where the X-ray sheet will go through it, draw with a knife and incise with a cutter. For the next X-ray, join the two X-ray with a little piece of transparent adhesive tape. Pointing at the casing dimension with a red felt pen, the plaster needs to flow freely. Here is a good position to stand. You need to humidify regularly. Ceramic works like bronze. You can have a raw casting. Well then, from a slip cast, you can also have a raw casting in which the artist needs to touch up small details like hair, toes, hands. The leg is cut in two. Keep a reference point here in order to see through. And I am going to point roughly everything that I need to cut to be parallel. X-ray setup, soaping up, closing the incision. Determining the bend, pushing out holes. Then starts making the projection of the X-rays onto the casing. 26 cm or 260 mm. Once it's all submerged into plaster, you will not have any clue anymore. But you can still see marks showing through outside of the mold. So these spaces in the plastic have to be plunged completely. Here you can see the pre-sewed part connected to the pre-cracked part, which is in the model. A zone for the plaster to move around, the whole thing and the part to be splitted. Here the X-ray is held by needle and nail. Here too I have used 2 small needle nails. Here is a variant. The X-ray has been glued directly on the pre-sewed section because I could not insist the arm to slip an X-ray inside. So there is a split section using a pre-sewed part made of undulated plastic and a narrow approach of a thin X-ray. Here porosity will stop any possible leaking. Coupling up with forwards. This helps the preliminary work for each side. Notches key, enfolded X-rays and drilling and punching out for industrial notches. Notches will be surrounded by the plaster and I will touch up the mold after the pour. To fill up all spaces. Last caution is case it splits slightly. Waterproof inside and outside using clay. So here we have 18 liters of water, 25 kg of plaster, 1 bag. I am going to prepare all this. If you have a volume of 9 liter fill-up, you'll need 6 liters of water and container for at least 12 liters. It's okay to dip your hand down to the bottom of the bucket to make sure there is no lumps or potatoes that may get in your way at the wrong time. You remove most of the air bubbles. You check the consistency of the plaster by watching how it covers up your hand. Use that kind of bucket. You can find it in stores. It is great because there are handles and a pouring lip, as smoothly as possible. Do not splash onto the model. It's the plaster which will find its way around the contours. Another first time for COD plâtre. .5 7 cm. Once the plaster starts to set, scrape it with a ruler. I'll loosen up some of the tightness. I release the second notch and pull both at the same time. Just an indication that that's transferred. Chamfer to break the angles. I put the knife where I can see the X-rays and force it open. Force it open with 2 knives is necessary. Use as well set sew with well spread teeth. The space of the pre-sewed section are cut with a cutter. I have 2 stripes of steel that we'll use to create stress. The third one is put into the middle and will make it break. It cracked here. Reach the X-ray, there, and all the way up here. The model will be partly cracked. That's the way it is. You have to sacrifice the model to get the mold. Heat on the scraper with a wooden mill. Attention to the pre-sewed section on both sides. The material will talk to me. I am interested in getting that piece here back. Small undercuts are removed if necessary. For additional splits, we now have a global overview on the mold, so I can easily underline with a pencil. Aim at the angle. We can see it actually break. You can use your finger to guide the process. Nine parts with one single pour of 25 kg of plaster. Chamfer for everything which is outside. Chamfer using a plane. Let's brush off every single particle of dust. Take a dry brush. Small undercuts will be evaluated. Keys have already been partially cut. In this whole section, I have enough space to drill a hole here and another one there. You can find all technical information in the COD Platter Book of Technical Summary on photographic images on www.codeplatter.fr. I have made holes in the mold to fill up and to empty the slip using a wood drill bit. So that little piece under here is actually part of the mold. I then had to carry out 2 extra slips. Here too, and eventually I got a mold in 11 parts. Fill using one of the holes. To increase the slip, reserve which is too small. Gently steer the slip inside the mold. The advantage of the 2 holes: one to let the air in while the slip can flow out of the other one. I'm going to move the mold, carrying it this time. The bottom part. Now I'm going to cut this arm and pick up the hole in order to control the process. and glue it back on with slip. You cannot unmold the same way you do with an artisan or an industrial mold. I have made 4 copies from earthenware. Defective copies will be used for trial with glaze or patina. 2 extra splits for a final mold of 13 parts with 1 single plaster pour. Cut!